In April of 1815, a mountain exploded so violently that the sky itself seemed to die. Imagine waking up to a sound louder than thunder, louder than cannons, louder than anything a human ear had ever known. Windows shattered. The ground shook like a living thing. People fell to their knees, thinking the end of the world had arrived. This was not a war. This was not a storm. This was Mount Tambora, tearing itself apart. The blast was heard more than 1,000 miles away. Sailors thought enemy ships were attacking. Villages were buried in darkness at midday. Ash fell like black snow. And this was only the beginning. Mount Tambora stood on an island in what is now Indonesia. Before the eruption, it rose more than 4,000 meters into the sky. After the eruption, the top of the mountain was gone, blown away. A giant crater more than 6 kilometers wide took its place. The force of the explosion was the largest ever recorded in human history. But here is the question that should stop you cold. How can one mountain change the entire planet? The answer lies in the sky. When Tambora erupted, it blasted huge amounts of ash and gas high into the upper atmosphere. Not just a little, enough to circle the globe. A thick veil of particles spread across the world. Sunlight struggled to pass through. The bright blue sky turned pale and strange. Sunsets burned, deep red and purple. It looked beautiful. It was deadly. Temperatures began to fall. At first, people did not understand what was happening. A cold day here, a strange frost there. Then came the year 1816, the year that would be remembered as the year without summer. Snow fell in June in parts of North America. Frost destroyed crops in July and August. Rivers froze early. Farmers watched their fields die. Wheat withered, corn failed. Oats never grew. Livestock starved because there was no feed. Imagine planting seeds with hope in your heart, watching green shoots rise, then waking up to find them black and dead from frost in the middle of summer. What would you feed your family? Across Europe, rain would not stop. Skies stayed gray for weeks. Fields turned to mud. Harvests failed again and again. Food prices soared. Bread became too expensive for many families. Hunger spread from village to village like an invisible plague. In some places, people ate grass. Others boiled leather just to survive. Food riots broke out. Desperate crowds stormed grain stores. Disease followed hunger. Weak bodies fell to typhus and other infections. The disaster was no longer only about weather. It was about survival. Let us pause and picture one small farming family in New England. A father wakes before dawn in June. He steps outside, expecting warm air. Instead, he sees white frost on the ground. His breath forms clouds in front of his face. He runs to the field. The corn leaves hang limp and dark. The beans are shriveled. His children stand in silence. They know what this means. The small supply of stored grain will not last until winter. He must choose: sell the cow to buy flour at a high price, or keep the cow and risk having no bread at all. That choice, repeated in thousands of homes, shows how a volcano on a distant island reached into daily life and forced impossible decisions. And still, many people had no idea that a volcano caused their misery. News traveled slowly in the early 19th century. The eruption happened in April of 1815. The cold summer struck in 1816. Few connected the two events. It felt like a curse, or a punishment, or a mystery of nature that could not be explained. The scale of the eruption was almost beyond belief. More than 70,000 people died directly from the blast's ash and resulting famine in the region around the mountain. Entire villages were wiped away by hot flows of gas and rock. Tsunamis struck nearby shores. Darkness covered the island for days. Yet the hidden impact in distant lands may have touched millions more. Why did the cold last so long? The gases released by Tambora included sulfur compounds high in the atmosphere. They formed tiny droplets that reflected sunlight back into space. Think of it as a giant mirror wrapped around the Earth. Less sunlight meant less warmth. Even a small drop in average temperature can destroy crops. In 1816, global temperatures dropped enough to cause chaos. There is another twist. In the gloomy summer of 1816, a group of writers gathered near Lake Geneva in Switzerland. Rain kept them indoors. The sky stayed dark. To pass the time, they told ghost stories. One young woman, Mary Shelley, began writing a novel about a scientist who brings a creature to life. That story became Frankenstein, a tale born from cold skies and endless storms. Even art was shaped by the ash of Tambora. Think about that. A volcano explodes in Indonesia. A summer disappears in Europe and America. A famous horror story is written in Switzerland. The world is more connected than it seems. As months passed, people began to adapt. Some farmers switched to hardier crops, like potatoes. Others migrated west in search of better land. In the United States, the hardship pushed families to move from New England toward the Midwest. Change followed disaster. Still, the suffering left scars. Parents watched children grow thin, Communities argued over scarce food. Faith was tested. Hope flickered. Yet people endured. They planted again the next year. They rebuilt homes. They carried on. Now pause for a moment and feel the weight of that time. No modern forecasts, no global news, no quick aid shipments. When the sky turned gray and the cold refused to leave, families faced it alone. Imagine the fear of not knowing if the sun would ever feel warm again. Imagine children asking why summer feels like winter. The silence at dinner when there is little to eat. The way hunger sharpens every worry. That emotional storm was as real as the physical one. It reminds us how fragile comfort can be and how quickly normal life can vanish. By 1817, the ash slowly settled. Sunlight grew stronger. Crops began to recover. The world warmed again, but the lesson remained. Nature does not need armies or weapons to change history. A single mountain can reshape economies, push migrations, inspire stories, and test the strength of millions. What would happen today if a similar eruption occurred? We have satellites and science now. We understand volcanic ash and climate effects far better. Early warnings could save lives near the mountain. Governments could coordinate food supplies. Yet our world is deeply connected. Crops grown in one region feed people in another. A sudden global cooling could disrupt trade, raise prices, and strain systems in ways we can only begin to imagine. That is the lasting power of Mount Tambora, the volcano. It is not just a story from the past. It is a reminder that the sky can change, that sunlight can fade, that stability is not guaranteed. And yet, there is another side to this story. Human resilience. Communities that shared what little they had. Farmers who tried again after failure. Writers who turned dark days into lasting art. Movement toward new lands and new beginnings. The mountain roared. The sky filled with ash. Summer vanished. But humanity did not. When you look at a calm blue sky, remember that it has not always been so certain. In 1816, people stared upward and wondered if warmth would ever return. It did. Slowly, painfully, but it returned. The story of Mount Tambora is a story of power and vulnerability. Of fear and endurance. It asks a simple but haunting question. If the sun dimmed tomorrow, how would we respond? History shows that we would struggle. We would adapt. We would create. We would move forward. The sky turned to ash once before. The world survived. And that truth carries both warning and hope.